We make dozens, maybe hundreds of little choices every single day without even thinking about them. But what if some of those common, everyday habits are silently doing a number on our most important organ? Well, today we're going to dive into 12 of those habits that could be harming your brain. So let's start with a big question, one that really gets you thinking. Are your daily habits secretly harming your brain? It's a little startling to think about, right? We're so often focused on our physical health, what we see in the mirror. And because of that, we can totally forget about the command center that's running the entire show. So yeah, it is high time we gave our brains the attention they really deserve. Let's get right into the habits we all need to be watching out for. Okay, first up, let's talk about the most direct input we give our bodies, the fuel we use. It turns out what we eat and drink has this huge and pretty much immediate impact on how we think. First on our list is one that so many of us struggle with, and that's too much sugar. Now, we all know the risks for our bodies, right? But here's the crazy brain connection. A high sugar diet can actually stop your brain from absorbing the proteins and nutrients it needs to thrive, and that can directly get in the way of development and memory. And it's not just about what you eat, it's also about how much. Overdoing it on food does a lot more than just affect your waistline. It can actually harden the brain's arteries, which directly messes with your mental abilities. And wait till you see the data on this. It's pretty striking. 22%. Just let that number sink in for a second. There was a study in the journal Neurology that followed 6,000 people for 10 years, and they found that those who were overweight saw their cognitive functions decline 22% faster. That is a serious acceleration of brain aging. Okay, here's a habit a ton of us fall into during a busy week. Skipping breakfast. That rush out the door might feel productive in the moment, but you're literally starving your brain of essential nutrients. And get this, a massive study in Japan confirmed the risk. Regularly skipping breakfast was linked to a significantly higher chance of having a stroke and high blood pressure. Now, it's a super simple fact, but one we forget all the time. Our bodies are about 70% water. And that one simple fact makes our next habit absolutely critical for brain function. Yeah, this is exactly why not drinking enough water is so bad for you. And the effects, they're almost immediate. Researchers found that just 2 hours of intense exercise without hydrating can cause a real, measurable cognitive decline. It hits your problem-solving skills and your attention span hard. All right, now for a habit with some truly widespread and devastating effects, smoking. Forget the lungs for a second. It directly attacks your brain. It can actually thin your cortex. That's the part responsible for things like language and memory, and it is strongly linked to dementia and brain inflammation. It's just bad news all around. And then we have alcohol. Now, moderate consumption can be fine, but chronic, excessive use, and we're talking more than 2 units a day for men or 1 for women, does something pretty shocking. It literally shrinks your brain over time by causing chemical imbalances and reducing its overall volume. So it's not just what we put into our bodies, it's also how we live our lives. Let's move on and look at our daily grind and how some of these modern routines can slowly but surely wear our minds down. Let's talk about a big one, not getting enough sleep. I want you to think of it like this. Your brain has this amazing nightly cleaning crew, but they only come out during your deep sleep cycle to clear away all the harmful toxins that build up during the day. If you skimp on sleep, you're basically letting all that toxic waste pile up, and that can lead to brain cell death. Next up, let's just bust the myth of multitasking once and for all. As the MIT neurologist Earl Miller puts it so perfectly, our brains are not wired to multitask well. So what's actually happening when we think we are? So, when you think you're multitasking, what you're really doing is forcing your brain to switch between different tasks at lightning speed. And every single switch has what's called a cognitive cost. This constant gear shifting jacks up your stress hormones like cortisol, and it just overstimulates your brain, leaving you in a total mental fog. Oh, here's one we are all guilty of at some point: working while sick. I mean, think about it. When you're ill, your brain is already dedicating massive resources to fighting off that infection. Piling work on top of that is kind of like asking your computer to run a super complex video game while it's already doing a full virus scan. Everything just grinds to a halt. Now, on the flip side of working too much is not moving enough. A sedentary lifestyle basically starves the brain of the one thing it craves: oxygen. Exercise gets your heart pumping, sends all that oxygen-rich blood up to your brain, and releases hormones that create the perfect environment for new brain cells to grow. All right, finally, let's take a look at our sensory world. There are things in our immediate environment that can have a surprisingly powerful and often unseen impact on our brain health. Let's start with sound. Listening to really loud music, especially with headphones, doesn't just put your ears at risk. Hearing loss is directly linked to brain problems like tissue loss. Why? Because when your brain has to constantly strain just to process sound, it has way fewer resources left over to actually store what you've heard into your memory. So, how do you know if it's too loud? Well, try this super simple arm's length test. Set your headphones to your usual volume, then take them off and hold them out in front of you. If you can still hear the music clearly, that's a pretty good sign you need to turn it down. And for our final habit, let's look at something that might feel super cozy but is actually quietly harmful: sleeping with your head under the covers. When you do this, you create this little bubble where you're breathing in more carbon dioxide and a lot less fresh oxygen, and that can damage your brain cells over time. Okay, I know that might have seemed like a lot of bad news, but here is the good news. Our brains are incredibly adaptable. So let's flip the script and talk about rewiring these habits with some small changes that can have a huge impact. Here's your action plan, broken down into simple steps. First, fuel your brain the right way. Don't skip breakfast, and please stay hydrated. Second, respect its natural rhythm. Prioritize sleep and try to focus on one thing at a time. Third, protect your senses. Manage the volume on your headphones and make sure you're breathing fresh air. And finally, move your body to keep that vital oxygen flowing. The key takeaway here is that you don't have to change everything all at once. Small, consistent changes can make a massive difference to your long-term brain health. So the real question, after hearing all this, is which one habit are you going to change starting today?